Truth is sometimes stranger than fiction, and today we will explore three mysterious stories that prove it. But before we get into the main content, if you are a fan of strange, mysterious, and slightly creepy things told through fascinating stories, then you have come to the right place. We bring you such stories every week. So if this one interests you, hit the like button and, by the way, send us a birthday card, jokingly, of course. But remember, put a glitter bomb in the card to make things more interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any interesting updates from us every week. Now, let's get started with today's three mysterious stories. One day in March 2012, Maria, a 5-year-old girl, sat on the floor of her family's small kitchen in a city in northeastern Brazil. She was holding an empada, the Brazilian version of the empanada, and taking small bites, her eyes intently watching her aunt, who was busy preparing a large pot of stew. Steam from the stove filled the small room, carrying with it the enticing aroma of spices and meat. The kitchen door opened, and Maria's mother walked in, bringing with her a light breeze from outside. Her face was radiant with joy, her cheeks flushed from the sun, and her footsteps hurried from the busy morning. In her hands was an empty metal tray, which had been filled with fragrant golden empadas earlier that morning. "Maria, guess how many empadas I sold today?" she asked cheerfully, her eyes sparkling with pride. Maria immediately jumped off the kitchen floor and ran to hug her mother's legs, her eyes shining with excitement. "All gone, right, Mom?" she guessed. Her mother laughed, placing the tray on the counter and patting her daughter's head. "Yes, all gone." The customers said they had never had such a delicious cake before. Aunt Anna stood beside her, smiling as she continued stirring the stew. "I told you, you make the best empadas in the area," she said, her voice full of pride but also humor. "Just the smell of it makes people irresistible." Maria watched her mother and aunt talk, her heart filled with admiration. For her, her mother was not only a baker but also her greatest inspiration. Maria always dreamed of one day following in her mother's footsteps, becoming a talented baker and bringing joy to everyone through delicious empadas. As Maria's mother told the story of her busy morning, laughter filled the small kitchen. The heat from the stew pot still spread, mixed with the lingering scent of baked goods in the air, creating a warm and peaceful feeling, like the love Maria's family had for each other and for the art of cooking. But what caught Maria's attention was not the empty tray, but the young woman standing behind her mother. This woman had shiny black hair, neatly tied at the nape of her neck, and sparkling eyes. Maria's mother introduced her, her voice cheerful. "Maria, this is Sophia. She will be your new nanny. From now on, you two will play together when Mom and Dad go to work." Maria looked at the young woman, her eyes wide with curiosity and reserve. In the past, there had been several nannies who came and went quickly, causing Maria to lose hope. However, she still tried to be friendly. As a gesture of goodwill, Maria handed Sophia her half-eaten empada. The young woman smiled and accepted it, thanking Maria in a warm voice. Maria's mother told her to go play in the backyard while she and Sophia discussed their new job. "As soon as we're done, Sophia will come out to play with you," her mother added, stroking Maria's head lovingly. The little girl obediently went out to the backyard and entertained herself. Maria wandered around the small yard, kicking some pebbles and admiring the wildflowers growing around the fence. But even after playing for a long time, Sophia did not come out as promised. An hour passed, and Maria began to feel bored. She decided to go back inside to see what was going on. When she entered the kitchen, Maria saw her mother and Sophia talking with serious expressions. Her mother saw Maria and said, "Go out and play a little longer, Maria. We're almost done." Although she was not satisfied, Maria obediently listened and returned to the backyard. But a strange feeling of unease rose in her heart. A month had passed since Sophia started working for Maria's family. Sophia was very kind, always patient and gentle with her. However, Maria still felt that something was wrong. She often heard whispers between her mother, father, aunt, and Sophia in the kitchen, but whenever Maria came near, they immediately fell silent or changed the subject. One afternoon, as usual, Maria was playing alone in the backyard. Suddenly, she heard strange noises coming from inside the house. It was not the usual cheerful laughter, but tense, urgent sounds. Maria stopped and listened. She recognized the voices of her mother, father, and aunt, but could not understand what they were saying. Curious, Maria tiptoed to the kitchen window and looked inside. Through the small gap, she saw her mother standing at the kitchen table, her face tense. Her father sat in the corner, tapping his fingers on the wooden tabletop, while her aunt occasionally glanced out the window, as if afraid someone was watching. "We can't go on like this." Maria heard her father's voice, low and determined. "We need a long-term solution. Otherwise, everything will fall apart." "But if we're found out," her mother whispered, her voice trembling. "No one will find out if we're careful," her aunt interrupted, her voice hoarse. "We've come this far. Turning back isn't an option." Maria felt her heart pounding. She didn't understand what they were talking about, but a vague fear began to creep in. She went back to the backyard, trying to play again, but her mind couldn't stop thinking about what she'd just heard. In the days that followed, Maria noticed more strange things about the house. Her father would often close the door to his study and sit there for hours at a time. Occasionally, he would let out a small laugh or shout excitedly as if he'd just thought of something important. Mother and aunt were busier with baking, but Maria felt that they were no longer as cheerful as before. The smiles on their faces now seemed to be just a mask hiding something deep inside. Sophia, Maria's nanny, had always shown concern and care for her. But Maria noticed that whenever she asked about the conversations in the kitchen or the family's strange actions, Sophia just smiled and said there was nothing to worry about. One day, Maria decided to find out the truth. She sneaked into her father's study when he was out. On the desk, Maria found a thick notebook with a black cover. The words on the cover read, "Family Plan, Secret." Maria opened it, but just then, she heard footsteps in the hallway. She quickly closed the notebook and ran out of the room, her heart pounding. Maria knew that she had stepped into a story that was bigger than she could understand. But even as a child, she senses that the secrets in this house are not simple, and they could change her life forever. A mother and daughter story. On the evening of January 23, 1989, in the chilly air of Rochester, New York, a mother was busily preparing dinner in the family's cozy kitchen. In the soft yellow light from the chandelier, her 11-year-old daughter walked in, her cheeks flushed from having just finished her newspaper route. The girl quietly hung her thick coat on a hanger, then walked to the kitchen table. "As usual," her mother asked, "how was your day? Was the route okay?" Usually, the girl would have replied simply, "Fine, Mom." But tonight was different. Instead, she hesitated. "Fine, but..." The mother turned, looking at her daughter worriedly. "What's wrong? What do you mean?" The girl sat down, rubbing her small hands together, and whispered, "I feel something strange." The mother frowned, sitting down next to her daughter. "Strange? What did you see?" The girl began, her voice trembling. While delivering the paper, She stopped in front of the house of an old man she often saw on her route. He was a very nice man, always waving to her as she passed. But tonight, something was wrong. He was waving, but it didn't look like usual. I don't know how to describe it, but there was something strange. The mother listened attentively, sensing the worry in her daughter's voice. She asked gently, "Are you sure? He's okay, right?" The girl nodded, but she couldn't hide her unease. The mother sensed something was wrong, not just with the story, but with the way her daughter was reacting. "Okay, I'll go check. You stay home." Tonight was no different. He waved to her again, but this time there was something off about the way he acted. She went home, and her mother waited in the living room, her eyes filled with concern. "Is everything okay?" "What did you say?" her mother asked, her voice filled with curiosity and concern. The girl fumbled, trying to put into words what she had just witnessed. "I'm not sure, but as I was passing by, I saw him, that man, sitting on the porch. It was dark, and there were two men sitting there. The porch had a screen, which obscured my vision, and the porch was low, making it hard to see. But when he waved to me, his legs seemed to be straight up in the air." Her mother frowned, not understanding. "What do you mean? Straight up in the air?" "Yes. It was like he was sitting on an invisible chair, and his legs were straight up in front of him, as if there was nothing supporting them. Even when he waved his arms, it was like he was waving between his legs. It was strange." Hearing this, her mother fell completely silent. She didn't know what to say. The story didn't make any sense. How could someone sit in such a strange position with their legs straight up in the air? But she also realized that her daughter was clearly confused and scared. "Are you sure? Maybe you saw things because it was dark," her mother gently suggested, but she herself felt that something was wrong. The girl shook her head, her eyes bewildered. "No, mother, I can't see things wrong. That's what I saw." She thought that perhaps her daughter's imagination had gone too far. So her mother said gently, "If he waved to you, then everything must be fine. Don't worry about it anymore." The girl didn't argue, but the worry was still there. The next night, the girl returned from her usual route, this time looking even more confused. She told her mother, "Mom, I saw him again. He was sitting on the porch, his legs straight up in the air, like last time. But this time, he didn't wave to me." Her mother frowned, trying to stay calm. "He didn't wave? Are you sure?" "I'm sure, Mom. I even stopped and waved to him, but he didn't respond." This time, the worry in the girl's voice was more obvious than ever. She continued, "I was worried. He looked strange. I didn't understand what was going on, so I went straight to the porch to check. But the porch screen was locked. I couldn't get in, and from the outside, the screen blocked my view. I couldn't really see him there." Her mother listened and didn't say anything for a long time. The story had been strange since the day before, and now it was even stranger. Her daughter had seen this for 2 consecutive days, but in her mind, she tried to find a reasonable explanation. "It's probably just an old man who likes his weird chair," she told herself, though she didn't quite believe it herself. But when she saw her daughter's eyes filled with worry and confusion, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Mom sat at the dining table, looking at her daughter's worried face. She kept insisting that she had seen the old man who lived on the corner sleeping in strange positions, and it made her feel uneasy. She tried to calm her daughter, putting a hand on her shoulder and saying, "Don't worry, honey. Maybe you're just exaggerating. He's old. Maybe he just doesn't rest like a young person." I'm sure everything's fine. I'll go check in the morning, okay? Her daughter looked at her mother, her eyes still a little uneasy, but she nodded, trusting that her mother would handle everything. The next morning, a little before 11 o'clock, the mother walked to the street where the old man lived. As she passed the familiar white picket fence that led to the small house, she saw the mailman walking nearby. She decided to ask him before going any further. "Hello, do you know the old man who lives in that house? Has anything strange happened lately?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. The mailman smiled and replied, "Nothing, ma'am. He's a nice old man, always saying hello to everyone when I pass by. I don't think there's anything to worry about." Hearing this, the mother thanked the mailman and stood there for a moment, thinking. His words had somewhat relieved her, but a vague feeling still lingered in her mind. After a moment's hesitation, she decided to return home and tell her daughter that everything was fine. "See?" she said, trying to smile reassuringly. "He's just a quiet old man. There's nothing to worry about." But even as she said that, deep down, she felt something was missing. A part of her wanted to be sure, but she couldn't figure out why. Her daughter was really worried about the old man she'd seen earlier. Her unease convinced her mother that things needed to be cleared up. "We can't let this bother you any longer," she thought. Even though it was only about 20 degrees outside, a biting cold, she decided to go down the road and check on the old man. "I'll make sure he's okay," she told herself, walking quickly down the icy path to the old man's small house. When she got there, the first thing she noticed was that the porch seemed to be obscured by a thin screen. Behind the screen, she could see a faint silhouette. It seemed to be the old man, sitting quietly, motionless. What really caught her attention, however, were two intact newspapers lying on the path leading to the door. They must have been there a few days ago, right around the time her daughter first noticed the strange thing. Her heart was pounding. This wasn't just a coincidence. "Something's wrong," she whispered. The feeling of unease grew. She hurried up the steps, moving closer to the screen on the porch. She waved, trying to get the old man's attention. "Hello, are you okay?" she called out, but there was no response. The figure inside remained motionless, not moving. The feeling of unease turned to panic. She headed straight for the front door, grabbed the handle, and tried to open it. But it was locked, just as her daughter had said. She looked around, hoping to find some way to get in. Finally, she pressed her face close to the screen, trying to get a better look inside. The mesh obscured her vision from a distance, but when she brought her face closer, she could see more clearly. A cold feeling ran down her spine as she saw. As the mother pressed her face closer to the mesh to get a better look, what she saw inside stunned her. The old man was there, but strangely enough, he was sitting in an unnatural position, his legs stretched out in front of him, his body seemingly stuck in an awkward position. A sense of dread rose in her as she realized what was happening. The old man wasn't just sitting there, he needed help. The mother jumped back, her heart pounding, and turned to run home to call the police. When the authorities arrived, they quickly broke down the door and approached the old man. He was identified as Robert Ham, 73, who lived alone in the house. The tragic story began to unfold. On January 23, just before the paperboy returned home and told her mother about the strange old man, Robert went out onto the porch. For some reason, he tried to sit on a plastic trash can to rest his legs. However, the lid could not support his weight, causing him to fall. The bin folded, trapping his body in a V shape, with his legs stretched out in front and his torso pressed against it. This position not only made him helpless to free himself, but also limited his ability to breathe. He could not call for help, could not scream. All he could do was wave his arms, hoping that someone would notice his danger. Unfortunately, no one understood the situation. The paperboy thought he was sitting in a strange position to greet people. Other passers-by only glanced at him and did not suspect anything. And then Mr. Robert Ham died. The main cause was a heart attack, but the confining position and lack of oxygen contributed to the tragedy. By the time his mother found out, it was too late. Robert died right where he fell, on his porch. Terry Garner's story, Tragedy in the Pig Pen, at about 7:30 a.m. On September 25, 2012, Terry Garner, a 69-year-old farmer living in rural Oregon, stepped out of his house as usual. It was a peaceful morning. The air was crisp and the dew still lingered on the fields. Terry, a quiet man but always dedicated to his work, carried a bucket full of feed for his flock. He headed straight for the enclosed yard, where the chirping of chickens and turkeys had become a familiar sound every morning. Terry scattered seeds on the ground, watching the flock huddle together. His eyes shone with satisfaction and love. Then he continued walking to the goat pen, where the 4-horned goats, a rare breed with a unique appearance, were waiting. He took some hay and threw it into the pen, standing for a moment to watch them graze. Terry is an animal lover. It may come as a surprise to many to learn that he was a butcher for most of his life. But when he retired 6 years ago, Terry completely changed his lifestyle. He no longer viewed animals as a source of profit, but rather as companions. He built a small farm where the animals were raised with unconditional love. Even when the nearby river overflowed, Terry did not hesitate to put all the animals in a special house that he built to protect them from flooding. Of all the animals Terry cared for, pigs were his favorite. Instead of raising them until they reached 250–300 pounds to sell to slaughterhouses, Terry let them roam free and feed them whenever they were hungry. This allowed his pigs to grow far beyond their normal size, with some weighing as much as 700 pounds. But to Terry, they were more than just animals. They were family. That morning, after feeding the chickens, turkeys, and goats, Terry picked up a large bucket of feed and headed for the pig pen. He stopped at the gate, smiling as he watched the pigs gather around the pen, squealing in anticipation. That was the last time anyone saw Terry alive. The strange disappearance. A few hours later, a member of Terry's family, Emily, decided to visit the farm. Emily had been trying to contact Terry all morning, but had not received a response from him. This worried her, because Terry, no matter how busy he was, always tried to call back as soon as he had the chance. Given his caring and family-oriented nature, it was unusual for him not to respond. When Emily arrived at the farm, an eerie silence fell over the place. The vast fields, usually filled with the sounds of animals and Terry working, were now filled with only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. She walked up to Terry's bungalow, where he had lived for more than 3 decades. Emily knocked on the door. The knocking sounded clear, but no one answered. She tried the knob, but it was locked from the inside. A feeling of unease rose strongly. Emily walked around the house, trying to look inside through the window. Everything seemed normal. Terry's armchair was still in the corner. The dining table was neat as usual. But what caught her attention were the cups of tea left on the table, as if he had left suddenly in the middle of drinking tea. Not giving up, Emily decided to go around the farm to search. She passed the chicken coop, where the chickens were scratching for food. Next was the goat pen, where the goats were leisurely grazing. When she reached the pig pen, she stopped for a moment, seeing the pigs rolling around in the mud as usual. But there was no trace of Terry. When Emily was about to go back to the house to check again, Her eyes were suddenly attracted by something sparkling in the pig pen. At first, she thought it was just light reflecting on the mud, but the closer she looked, the more she realized that it was unusual. Curious, Emily walked closer to the pig pen, feeling a chill down her spine when she realized that the object lying in the mud was not something strange. It was Terry's dentures. Emily stood still, her heart pounding. This scene was too strange and haunting. Why were Terry's dentures lying here, in the pig pen, in the mud? And more importantly, where is he? Panicking, Emily took a few steps back, trying to calm herself down but couldn't stop the shaking. Questions swirled in her mind. She turned and ran back to the house, grabbed her phone, and immediately called the police. When the police answered the call, Emily tried to explain the situation in a trembling voice. "Please come right away. I can't find my Uncle Terry. I found his dentures in the pig pen. This is really strange. I'm worried something terrible has happened." The police assured her that they would be there soon. While waiting, Emily slumped into a chair on the porch, her eyes still fixed on the pig pen, her heart filled with anxiety. The horrifying truth. When the police arrived at the scene, a gruesome scene appeared before them. The pig pen was strangely quiet, except for a few clucking sounds from the pigs huddled in the corner. The stench was so strong that investigators had to cover their faces, but they went in anyway. Looking at the tracks on the muddy ground, the investigation team began to reconstruct what might have happened that fateful morning. Initial speculation was that Terry, a man in his 60s, may have suffered a sudden medical event, a heart attack or stroke, that caused him to fall onto the floor of the pig pen. It was also possible that he slipped on the slippery ground while carrying food into the pen. The terrifying thing was that, while he lay motionless, the pigs, perhaps hungry or agitated by the unusual presence, began to tear at his body. When his relatives finally discovered him, all that was left was a small portion, not intact enough to be identified. Investigators found Terry's dentures in the mud, a crucial clue to his identity. The incident not only shocked the family, but also shocked the whole community. Stories about the pig's aggressiveness spread at a dizzying speed, stirring up fear among farmers in the area. This further motivated the police to clarify whether this was a simple accident or if there was something darker hidden. Aftermath and reflection. The story of Terry Garner's tragic death was not only a personal pain, but also a wake-up call for the whole community. People in the area could not stop talking about that terrible event, about how Terry, a dedicated farmer, devoted to his work, passed away in such heartbreaking circumstances. Terry Garner, with his calloused hands and a smile always on his face, was a person that everyone loved. He raised his pigs, not only with food, but also with love. The days of taking care of the pigs became a part of his life, a symbol of harmony between humans and nature. But it was in that pigsty, once filled with the laughter and peaceful sounds of the countryside, that Terry met his tragic end. His death was a stark reminder of the fragile line between humans and nature, between unconditional love and the survival instinct of animals. The community, in the aftermath, began to ask, do we really understand the animals we raise? Does the harmony we imagine exist, or is it just an illusion created by human love? Terry is gone, but his memory lives on in the stories of the people. He left behind not only the pigs, the fields, or the small house, but also a lesson. Never underestimate the power of nature, even when it appears in the gentlest form.